Hello everyone, another week, another video, and for the very first time, this is going to be a more produced episode of my vlog. And I guess this video technically won't be a vlog, but more of a countdown. It's a very popular sort of thing on YouTube that I've seen. A lot of people do countdowns of their favorite things. So I'm going to throw my hat into the ring and give you my top 10 favorite Pokemon games. So, Pokemon has been around for quite a while now, over 20 years, and I have been playing Pokemon-related games for many of those years. I will admittedly say that I have not played every Pokemon game because there are quite a bit of them. And I would just like to share with everyone my top 10 favorite games that are Pokemon-related. So without further ado, let's get to it. Number 10. Pokemon Conquest. So starting out this countdown, we have a kind of an odder sort of Pokemon game, and that is Pokemon Conquest. Known in Japan as Pokemon Nobunaga's Ambition, this is a tactical role-playing game, kind of also set in sort of medieval Japan, where all the warlords have Pokemon. Crazy concept, I know, but that's exactly that concept that got me interested. You may or may not know this, I'm a bit of a history fan, and so seeing that combined with one of my favorite gaming franchises, Pokemon, be intermingled, it was just a match made in Pokemon heaven. I will admit that I have never beaten this game, mostly because I lost it kind of in a move. I will say that from what I have played, it had everything that I liked. The historical connection, Pokemon, of course, and the fact that it was a tactical role-playing game. So there is a bit of an asterisk on this number 10 pick, but I'm sure if I were to beat it, it might have moved up a few spots. But overall, I feel like there are some greater Pokemon games out there. So number 10, still a pretty good spot to be in. Number 9, Pokemon Yellow. I actually got my introduction to Pokemon through the series. I did not play the original games until maybe about a year after I first discovered the Pokemon TV show. Obviously, Pokemon Yellow, sort of a video game version of the anime. Your starting Pokemon is Pikachu, just like Ash's was in the TV show. Team Rocket, Jesse and James make an appearance as the Rocket villains, alongside the other Rocket grunts and Giovanni from the original series. And you also are able to get the other 3 starters, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle, sort of similar to how they were in the anime. You don't necessarily catch them, but you're sort of given them, as Ash receives a lot of his Pokemon in the show, I feel like. But the fact that you were able to kind of be Ash and play the game as if you were in the anime, and being able to have a Pokemon sidekick, much like Ash did in the show, it was pretty cool. Being able to check on Pikachu's status, those little cute screens where you see his emotions. Very cute and fun. Number 8. Pokemon Omega Ruby. Now for the most part in this list, I'm not really including a lot of the remakes of previous games. However, I feel like Pokemon Omega Ruby, and this is probably a good time to mention that of the main series, I always play sort of the lighter color of the 2 games that come out. And this just goes back to the fact that I had Pokemon Red in the very beginning, so I always chose to list bluer color. Well, I did enjoy Ruby back in the day. I feel like the experience playing through Omega Ruby added a lot more to the story and to the game itself that I had to give it a bit of a higher nod than the original game. I feel like Team Aqua and Team Magma's conflict with one another was a little bit more fleshed out. For sure, the people within those organizations were also more fleshed out. We actually got some other characters besides just their team leaders. And I feel like the whole battle leading up to Omega Groudon, and I'm sure Omega Kyogre as well, it just felt a lot more epic. Now, I will say that the original games probably would not have made it on my list. It would have been very close to being included, but I originally had some issues with Ruby and Sapphire from that I could remember. Famously said, there was a lot of water in the game, so I guess you can say that I'm Team Magma in that sense, because I felt in the original game there was a lot of surfing going along, and that was never a favorite part of mine. Maybe because I liked fire Pokemon, and I had water types and fire types, you know, led to a lot of me not using my fire type Pokemon. But I felt the story really just kind of made up for sort of some of the pitfalls that I personally had with the previous game. Number 7. Pokemon White. So continuing off that trend of great stories in the Pokemon series, I would argue that the story in White and Black were probably some of their better ones. The whole plot with Team Plasma and their crusade to liberate and free Pokemon, and just the whole background with N and his family secrets and his ability to talk to Pokemon, it was something a little different than from other games in the series. I have to say that I really enjoyed the fact that we also had your rival and additional friend be more part of the story as well. It made it feel more like I was part of the story, because it wasn't just me, the silent protagonist. There was actual other people interacting that were on my side with the villains in the story. I also feel that the story set things back a tiny bit. It seemed in every Pokemon game leading up to Black and White, the legendary Pokemon featured in it were getting stronger and stronger. I mean, Ruby and Sapphire, you had basically the beings that created the land, the water, and the air. In Diamond and Pearl, you had creatures that were masters of time and space, and eventually Pokemon God was revealed. But in Black and White, things were kind of rolled back just a tiny bit, in that the two main legendary Pokemon featured within the game were just kind of really strong dragons. I liked that a little bit more because I honestly didn't know where else they could go with that, to be honest. And I guess it made it feel a tiny bit more realistic, that a 10-year-old is not necessarily saving the universe, but just kind of focusing on one part of the world. A stretch, I know, but a little bit more believable. Number 6. Pokemon Stadium. So yes, Pokemon Stadium. The first game released on the N64 that was Pokemon related, and the first game to really feature Pokemon in sort of a 3D rendered space. I remember as a child being very, very excited about the idea of Pokemon Stadium, because before that they were just 2D sprites that were not always the best looking. So being able to finally see them on the screen and have Pokemon battles with 3D models was outstanding at the time. Things have definitely come a long way, but as a child, the first time being able to see something like that was a pretty amazing thing. And also, Pokemon Stadium itself was just a fun game. I mean, it had a lot of mini-games, and while battling was the main focus of the game, the fact that you could import your Pokemon from your Game Boy games really just helped make that a little bit more personable. So yeah, Pokemon Stadium, great game, and I give it the nod over Pokemon Stadium 2, which was another one I considered adding to this list, merely for the fact that it was the first one, and that initial experience is something I won't forget. Number 5. Pokemon Coliseum. So, in a similar vein to Pokemon Stadium, Pokemon Coliseum was a continuation of that series in being able to have Pokemon battles in a 3D rendered world. However, what kind of separates Pokemon Coliseum from Pokemon Stadium was that there was also a standalone game built into the game itself. Obviously not as in-depth as any of the portable games, Pokemon Coliseum did have a story mode in which you were kind of an outlaw who was capturing Pokemon that had been corrupted. This is really the first time you could play a Pokemon game in a 3D world, and we wouldn't see this for quite a few years after. So even though there was a lot of differences from your mainstay Pokemon games, it still was pretty fun to be able to walk around in a world and see what it was like to not just be a 2D sprite walking from left to right and up and down. Number 4. Pokemon Pearl. Pokemon Pearl was a game that for me really harkened back to the original game. I would argue that the Pokemon designs in this game bared a little bit more resemblance towards some of the Pokemon in the original Pokemon games. And to further back that up, some of the Pokemon in this game were actually evolutions from Pokemon in the original games. Both Electabuzz and Magmar received evolutions in this generation, as well as a couple other Pokemon like Tangela and Lickitung. Not only that, I felt as if Diamond and Pearl really started amping up the story. As I said, the original Ruby and Sapphire, it felt more or less like a rehashing of the previous games. There was an evil organization, their goal, use a Pokemon to do something very nefarious. Now, again, I played Pokemon Pearl and not Pokemon Diamond because it was the more quote-unquote red version of this generation. Aside from the Pokemon design, I really enjoyed the story of this game, and particularly, I really enjoyed seeing Palkia for the first time. In fact, the background music for your battle with Palkia is probably one of my favorite in the entire Pokemon game series. In my opinion, I don't think there is another Pokemon battle theme that more accurately gives the same emotional response and fits than in this instance. It also features a battle with one of my favorite characters in all of the Pokemon games, and that is with Cynthia, the champion of the Sinnoh region. It is in my opinion, and I feel as if many would agree, of all the champions in all the games, Cynthia is probably the most challenging, and definitely I give a lot of respect to the character for that in itself. Number 3. Pokemon Snap. Now, this is a bit of a divergence from some of the other games that I've mentioned within the Pokemon franchise, but here's why it lands where it does on my top favorites list. Pokemon Snap was the second real 3D take on the Pokemon world. It was released for the N64 in 1999. Unlike Pokemon Stadium, and pretty much any of the other Pokemon games previously, a tiny exception for Yellow, this was the first time we got to hear the Pokemon speak in the manner that they do in the anime, by saying their names. Being that I was a big fan of the anime, and that the anime is what originally got me into Pokemon in general, Pokemon Snap really just kind of brought alive the Pokemon world for me. I really enjoyed seeing them in their natural environment. It made it feel, like I said, a little bit more real, and I liked the fact that it was just a different take on a Pokemon game in general. You were capturing Pokemon still, but you were capturing them on film this time around. All in all, too, I've always felt that it was much more of a relaxing type style of game. Your goal, as I said, is not battling or fighting an evil organization. Your goal is just to take pictures of Pokemon in the wild. Something very calming and therapeutic about it. To this day, it remains one of my favorites, and the last time I played it was on the Wii U. Now, I'm hoping that Nintendo will release it again on the Switch, because unlike some other Pokemon games, I feel like Pokemon Snap, with perhaps maybe just a slight graphical upgrade to today's standards, is one of the games that can really stand the test of time. And hey, I also wouldn't complain if there was a sequel to this game at some point. Number 2. Pokemon Red. Pokemon Red. The first game in the Pokemon franchise that I've ever played. As such, it has a very, very near and dear place in my heart. It was really this game that kind of made me become a Pokemon fanatic. Obviously, as I've said previously, the anime had a big influence on me, but being able to physically play the game, to be the character, to catch my own Pokemon, that is really what hooked me into this fandom that I am still part of today. I mean, what else can be said about this game? It's really the standard, and while its remake, Pokemon Fire Red, had some slight upgrades made to the overall experience, it, as I said, still holds a very near and dear place in my heart as being the first game that I've ever played. The first time I ever earned a gym badge. The first time I ever caught a Pokemon. The first bond I made with my starter. The first time I became champion. All these memories, these firsts, are what hold this game in such high esteem to me, and it'll always be one of my favorites. But it is not my absolute favorite. Number 1. Pokemon Gold. Pokemon Gold is my absolute favorite Pokemon game. The remake was great, but there's nothing that can encapsulate the initial feeling I had when I played the original Pokemon Gold. In every way, to me, it felt like a true expansion of a game that I already loved, Pokemon Red. Not only did we have new Pokemon, new gym battles, a new story, but we also had a returning to the past. For after you beat the first half of the game and defeat the Elite Four, you're able to travel back to Kanto to once again travel through the original setting and battle the original gym leaders. So while Pokemon Red will always hold a special place in my heart as one of my favorite games, Pokemon Gold is always definitely going to be one of the top games for me in the Pokemon franchise. And that's it. This was my top 10 countdown of my favorite Pokemon games. Admittedly, this is one of my first times doing one of these top 10 lists, and as you can tell, it's probably a little shaky. I've already learned some tips doing this video that I'm probably going to incorporate in videos like this coming in the future. I appreciate you bearing with me, and I would like to ask, what are your favorite Pokemon games? Feel free to leave a comment below and we can discuss on a future episode. Alrighty folks, I thank you for watching, have a great week, and goodbye for now.